joining us today for the virtual huddle for 2021. My name is Stacy Fraser Thompson. I'm the current chair for the Community College's Institutional Interest Group. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Dr. Virginia Bunyanelli. She is our chair-elect, and our illustrious past chair, Joanne Tung, is also here with us. And we have our chair emeritus. We're never going to let her go, Ashley Tankersley from Hillsborough, here with us as well. She's got her head up. She's not putting herself on video. We don't blame her. So, but we're going to get the ball rolling here because we have a lot of information to cover with you today, and we want to make sure that we're getting everything out to you. Can someone just acknowledge that they can see the screen for me, please? A thumb or anything? Okay, gotcha. Thank you so much. So that's us. I already introduced us, but you can see our lovely floating heads in the PowerPoint now. We are your chair stream, but understand we roll off and there is opportunities in the future. We are highly interested in hearing from you as members of the CCIIG network to find out what you as our interest group want to know. And so it is very important, if you want to engage with us, contact us. Let us know what more we can tell you, what we can provide to you to give you what you need as a community college. So we are here to represent you and to also engage with you. So please feel free to contact us if you have questions, if we can help you. Amongst this group, you have experienced immigration people, international recruitment, and study abroad. So in all these aspects, we're glad to help. If one of us doesn't know, we can direct you to someone who can help you. So that's, and we all speak the same language because we all have similar issues by being community colleges. So don't take this as the first engagement. Take this as a permanent engagement. If you have questions, please feel free to connect with us. So we did a survey, and last year we also did it, and it was really kind of interesting. We wanted to do a comparison of where we were this time last year in the early stages of the COVID year. And we did the survey then, and some of the questions that we asked last year and this year: were you contacted by local health offices? 8% said yes, 73% said no or unsure. Recruitment, what kind of recruitment were you doing? Then most people were jumping to 36% virtual. They were going to online testing and using things through agents, 16%. Unsure, still working on a plan, considering that was the second month of COVID shutdowns. I think there was a lot of unsureness. And I'm sure even after we did the survey, a lot of things pivoted and changed. International orientation for fall of 20. We were looking at who was doing what. So many were looking at doing virtual, hybrid, or sending material electronically, or various other actions, and whether or not they did insurance. So we just did a survey for this year, and so this is the results we got. So where are we now? So the respondents, last year we had 47 respondents. This year we had 45, which was interesting. Most everybody came from ISSS offices, admissions offices, or something pertaining to global engagement. The majority of our institutions, 58%, have 1 to 2 person offices. Only 13% had 3 to 4 person offices. 16% had 5 to 9 person offices. And some schools, I don't know who you are, but you must be huge, had 10 to 20 personnel relating to international education staff that work in this area. Study abroad, we found that of respondents, 35% do not offer study abroad opportunities. 1% will resume study abroad this year. 49% will resume next year. 1% are waiting until 2023, and 14% are still unsure. For those who are doing study abroad, 20% have new health and safety protocols. 39% will follow traditional protocols, and 20% answer that they are unsure or will follow things like CDC recommendations. So of that, again, this was only the ones that offer it. So we're only about 50% of our respondents actually do study abroad. Of that, 40% said that they were doing virtual exchanges in 2021. So we're going to swap into recruitment. And in recruitment, we had a couple that didn't answer, didn't know. And there are people that worked with that abroad offices that may have nothing to do with it. So some of them are working with in-country partners. They're still working on a plan for 21. The ones that said other, they said that they'd be doing all of the above, going back to the way they were or doing in person. And the majority are continuing with virtual communication and virtual recruitment. International orientation. So this is interesting, but it's definitely a drop down from the virtual orientations. It seems like most people are going towards a combination of hybrid, asynchronous, some in person, or synchronous, real time. So it seems like more people are going back to some sort of more face-to-face connection by fall. So the other ones that we asked is, do you plan to resume face-to-face instruction for fall of 21? That question was mostly no for fall of 2020. This year we have 58%. There's still 42% that are still waiting to see how things go. I think it's a state by state issue or institution by institution issue. And interestingly, we've had an increase in the number of schools that have mandatory health insurance or that they monitor health insurance. Went up from 68%. So one other thing that's going to be coming up that we wanted to tell you about before we get into our wonderful presenters today for our topics is that there will be a CCIIG meeting that will be held in association with the NAFSA National Conference. I know the conference itself is June 1st through the 4th, but we have a date that's scheduled for the next meeting on June 24th at 1 p.m. Eastern time. This is tentative. We're still trying to confirm that this is going to be our available time, but we wanted to at least get this so you can mark your calendars. If it changes, we will let you know as soon as possible and we will confirm it. Our intent during that meeting is to do something more informal and to do discussions and do small groups and breakout sessions within our group to find out what's going on in the challenges and to talk to each other a little more directly than we were able to do in this format. So we hope you will join us next time. So unless anybody else has something to add, I would like to introduce our first speaker. I'd like to introduce Sophia Iliakis Darty. Sophia, did I do your name right?
Yeah, that was fine.
Okay, I do my best. You're with Peninsula College, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so and she's going to be joined by Dr. Virginia Bunganelli from St. Charles Community College, and they're going to talk about international recruitment. So thank you all for joining us today.
All right.
Okay. Should I go ahead and start, Stacy?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I thought someone had said something there, so I wasn't sure what was going on. All right. Okay, well, hello, everybody. It's great to see you all here today, wherever you may be. So good morning, good evening, good afternoon. And it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for asking me to join you here today to speak about recruitment and different ways that we can continue doing the work we're doing, and speak a little bit about AIRC. And my partner in crime here, Virginia, who's a good friend and also a member of AIRC, is going to be working in this, doing the presentation with me. So I'm going to go ahead and bring it up here, and we will both be communicating with you on this. Let me just grab the share. There we go. All right. Okay. I hope everybody can see that. Is that all right? Yep. Good, good, good. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit in the next few minutes about recruitment and how you can leverage different partnerships with different entities in order to succeed in your recruitment efforts. And one of those, of course, is going to be AIRC. I'll be talking about that. For those of you who are not members of AIRC, I'll tell you a little bit about that organization. Virginia is going to speak a little bit about her success with study abroad programs in recruitment, and then we'll both comment on global networks in which to create recruitment opportunities. Okay. I am the Associate Dean at Peninsula College in Washington State, which is literally right at the tippy corner of the United States, right across from Victoria, British Columbia. So I guess that makes us somewhat Canadian. Isn't that nice? Okay, so yeah, and I've been here, geez, about 12 years, 13 years. And before that, I was at Green River. And prior to that, I was at Highline. So other than making myself sound really old, I am Washington, born and bred. And I think I saw a couple of my friends from Washington here. So I'll be looking forward to maybe some comments from them. And Virginia, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Okay, hi, I'm Virginia Bunn-Ganaley, and I'm with St. Charles Community College. I'm now the Director of International Student Services, and before that, I was the Program Manager for Recruitment and Study Abroad for the Global Studies Department, and I was a full-time English faculty member. So I've been at St. Charles Community College for the better part of 18 years, with the exception of about 3 years when I was in Mexico City. 2 years when I was in Mexico City and 1 year when I was with a nonprofit. So that's a little about me.
Great. Okay, so we shall move along. Okay, so this is some information that we gathered from the American Council on Education Center for Internationalization and Global Education, so CCIIG. This is just some information since it was clear that, oh, we should probably bring that up. Stacy, could you please bring up the results of the poll of the questions that we had there?
Sophia, we need to.
Oh, we don't have, we need to do it.
Yeah, we need
to.
First,
we need to do it.
So I went ahead and launched it.
Okay, great. So we have a little poll here, so that will help us kind of get an idea of where everybody's at in their recruitment efforts and where they're coming from. And so if you could please just go ahead and complete that poll, and maybe we can set a little more time for it. Do you have a time set on that, Virginia, or does it?
I mean, it's up to 30 seconds now. Let's give it about a minute and a half.
Okay.
Is that enough time, or do you
maybe
want?
I'd say, because they have to read through them, maybe 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, and get everybody's answers there. Maybe a couple minutes. And that will help us determine what to focus on. Give everybody a little time. Wow, it's fun watching these in progress. You could see all these results come through. Okay, very interesting. So that first question is kind of in line with what Stacy had already put up in her PowerPoint, in her facts there about smaller offices. Pretty significant. Okay, just a few more seconds here. Okay. So I think I'm not seeing it change much more than that. So maybe we can just stop there, Virginia, and go ahead and look at the results. So the first question was, how would you identify the size of your international office? And the smaller office obviously had 73% of the takes. So that's kind of what we expected. Not just because what we saw in Stacy's, but it's kind of, it's not unusual. It's, I think, where many institutions are at right now. And then number 2, how would you classify your pre-COVID recruitment efforts to successful outcomes? Minimal investment, okay, 58%, moderate investment, 37%, maximum investment. So when we talk about recruitment efforts and outcomes, that includes everything from going out to actually physically recruit, armchair recruitment, investment that you make financially and with staff. Okay, so 58%. How would you classify your current COVID recruitment efforts to successful outcomes? It's about the same. Maybe a little bit more minimal. Okay. I'd be curious to hear about that, actually. All right, number 4, what do you perceive as your greatest internal recruitment challenge? Marketing recruitment funds, yep. Institutional support, staffing, and other. Yeah, this is why we're all here, to get some ideas, but funds, yeah, it's a big challenge right now across the board. And finally, what do you perceive as your greatest external recruitment challenge? Yeah, geopolitics and pandemic. International competition, not quite as high as domestic, okay? Right, okay. Interesting. So if we have some time at the end, I'd like to ask a couple questions about this, but is there a way we can hold on to these results, Virginia, to bring them up at the end? Do you know how? Oh, you're on mute.
We should be able to bring them back.
Okay, okay. All right, great. Well, thank you for taking part in that. We'll revisit that towards the end here when we can get some conversations going. Okay, so in line with that, these are some of the challenges that were identified for community colleges in the recruitment sector. So oftentimes under-resourced, which is something that we saw considering the smaller offices and the funding. Creativity, and some that are new to community colleges. People have multiple roles. Community college, we all wear lots of hats, so that's not a surprise. Support services. Okay, and that's when we think of our students, of course, you know, it's an all-encompassing job to make sure that they're covered and serviced in every area. So support services and having everybody on board is important across the campus. And then transfers. Okay. Virginia, did you want to comment on anything on this page?
No, just, you know, a lot of us are doing 5 jobs. Also, for many of us, international is new to the institution. So that's all.
For now, on Stacy's charts there, she showed that there were some offices that had, you know, 10 plus people. Those programs, at least the ones I'm familiar with, at least here in Washington State, are very large, but they're also very well funded, or they wouldn't be quite as large, but they are bringing in the students to sustain those. So interestingly, even though community colleges, I think we all wear lots of hats, my experience in a organization that large is I didn't wear a lot of hats because I kind of had to be in my box to make that machine work. Because everybody had their job. So it is a bit different. Now I work in an office that's much, much smaller. So I'm in the 1 to 5 range right now, which I chose to do, coming from such a large one, large organization. So yeah, competing dollars and competing time as a staff member certainly are challenges as we go on. Okay, smart partnerships. So now we talk a little bit about the different types of partnerships that you can use strategically to build your recruitment efforts, if you haven't already. So I'm going to talk a little bit here about AIRC. I don't know how many people on this in this session are members of AIRC or AIRC. We say AIRC, it makes it easier. I'm the president-elect for AIRC, and I've been involved with AIRC for about 7 years. The American International Recruitment Council has been in existence for 11 years now. It's a nonprofit association of accredited U.S. post-secondary institutions and recruitment agencies. So there are about over 300 institutional members from the United States. So it is an American organization, but the agents that we work with are from overseas, and there are about 80 agents, 80 plus right now, I think about 83. And there are always agents that are trying to get certified in order to become members of AIRC. And so the benefit of joining, one benefit of joining AIRC, and the reason why agents join AIRC, is to actually have the ability to partner with member institutions that have a like foundation. So we're all part of the same organization, but you know, if we compare this to something, for example, like ISEF, where it's kind of, you know, you meet, greet, speed dating, all that, here, at AIRC, you already have this as a captive audience. You already have these partnerships ready there to avail of that benefit. So these institutions and these agency partners, we come together usually during our conference. Our conference this past year was virtual, like many conferences have been. All conferences for the most part have been. And it was our largest conference ever. So we had over 400 attendees, which was fantastic. The benefit I think we've all learned across the board with virtual fairs is that we have the ability to go even if we don't have the funds to go. So this was, and we were able to bring, invite those agents and institutions to bring, various people from their organizations as well, and not increase the cost. So they could come as a group at the same price. So it was a real benefit for them as well. And we will probably continue to do some type of virtual event every year, in addition to our physical event, which we anticipate to have, hopefully will be in Miami, but if not, and normally our event is held, our conference is held in December around ISEF, because we used to be partnered more closely with ISEF. So we try to organize the event to be near the ISEF event here in the States. And so that when agents or institutions go, they can jump from one to the other pretty easily. So this year we'll be in Miami, and hopefully next year we'll see where we're at, but we hope to physically be able to go. So we are a nonprofit, and we are known as a standards development organization with the US Department of Justice and the Federal Trade Commission. So what this means is we have 5 standards that we work within in order to certify agencies. You could compare this maybe to what institutions go through when we become accredited. Okay, this would be an accreditation type of certification that these agencies go through. They pay for it, and all of these standards, which are broken down into the 5 you see in front of you, the first being an organizational effectiveness, the second being integrity of recruitment process, the third, student and family engagement, pre and post enrollment. Standard 4 is institutional engagement, pre and post recruitment, and standard 5 is a complaints process. So this is a real deep dive into these agencies and how they operate, and it involves a site visit by which we have site visitors that we train to actually go out and visit the different agencies in the countries where they operate. And they are certified through our commission. We actually have a commission. So AIRC has 2 bodies. We have the board of trustees, or the board of directors, I should say, that has 12 members. And then we have a certification commission. And that certification commission has an additional 12 people. And everybody in the certification commission are actually people who are members working at an institution in the United States. And I think this year was the first time we actually brought on somebody from a boarding school, perhaps. But other than that, those commissioners actually do all of the work of receiving the reports that come from the site visits, go through all of that, discuss every single agency to make sure that the standards are being met. Once they have gone through all of that, they then approve a certification and then forward that to the board of directors to make a final determination on the certification of that agent. And so it is a pretty long, drawn out process. It takes about 3 to 6 months, depending on when that site visit can be completed. And then the board finalizes those agencies and approves them or not, or if they have questions, normally the certifications do go through. So it is an in-depth process, and it's one that the agents find beneficial for their recruitment as well. This is when we talk about the certification and how it's different from different types of certifications that might be out there. For example, some agents try to do an ICEF certification or something with the British Council, etc. So these would be the ways that it's different for what they're doing in the US. It follows global practice in quality assurance and accreditation. The applicant has public input and comment. It's FCPA background screening, and if you didn't know what that was, I listed it below, which is Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Basically prohibits firms and individuals from paying bribes to foreign officials to further business deals. Documentation that 40 standards are met. Those are of the 5 standards I showed you, those 40 are embedded within those. There are 16 screeners, including 1 on-site reviewer. So 16, sorry, I thought it was 12 commissioners, it's 16. And then there's an annual reporting function. So each agency has to send an annual report to the AIRC head office just to show, that they're still within compliance. And then there's public comment and complaint process. So if there is a complaint made by an organization or towards an agency that's a member of AIRC by an institutional member, depending on that complaint, it can be a public process or it can be private depending on what the complaint is. Okay, so there really is quite a fair bit of checks and balances. One of the questions that sometimes comes up from our agents is why they have to undergo this, for their certification, they have to undergo such a in-depth process, and they feel that the institutions don't have to do the same. And then we have to explain that we have to go through accreditation. So they tend to be okay with that to a certain extent. Okay. When an agency, I thought this was valuable to put into the presentation because it's important, I think, for institutions to understand what a certified agent, the benefits to them for becoming certified with AIRC outside of just becoming a member of an organization where they can partner with US institutions. It provides for them on the marketing side of the house, amongst the competition that they have to deal with in their own country, a seal of approval recognized by US institutions and state agencies. So there are some institutions, and I think SUNY New York is one of them, that would only work with agents that have been AIRC certified because they've undergone this, this in-depth review. And the certification process does make it possible if you're, for example, not able to pay commission, but you want to work with agencies. If you're not able to pay commission, if you're in an institution that doesn't allow commission to be paid, what this can do is through AIRC, you can actually work with agents that if you're in a new, an institution that is new to international recruitment or new to study abroad or new to the international education sector, then AIRC is one way of, I would say, in educating your senior management or cabinet level executives about the ability to work with agents in a way that would be something that they could be, that they could accept as US practice, because the agents who are certified by AIRC, when they go through the process, AIRC makes very clear what the expectations are to be certified. And those expectations are what meet the needs of most US institutions. So when you have to have an agent be approved, if an agent needs to be approved by your institution, this gives them just a little more credibility and a little more comfort in working with that agent. For the agency, it also allows them to use our logo, our certified logo that shows that they've met that approval. Agencies are listed in the AIRC Certified Agency Finder. So for those of you who are not members of AIRC, you can certainly go to our website that I put up earlier, and you can see who our certified agents are, as well as our institutional members. They gain a voice in a rapidly growing community concerned with professionalism in international student recruitment. This is very true. Because of the system that we've developed, not only are those agencies able to come and be in person and voice their concerns during the conference, but we have a way and means by which they can communicate with us throughout, as well as through our website regarding their concerns. And they actually help us grow and form our policies and procedures. All of their input is considered when we make our strategic plan. And we've just rolled out a new strategic plan that will be coming out to our membership not long from now. We just pretty much approved it at the board level. So it did have input from our members, all members, and agencies were certainly held in high regard when we were listening to that voice. And then, yeah, we have a password protected directory, of course, and institutional members and other global educators may attend the conference, exhibit and participate in AIRC booths and NAFSA National Conference. So our agents, our agency members and our institutional members, the agency members like NAFSA are, they have the opportunity to showcase their agency at our conference. And one thing I've heard from both agents and institutional members is they like the AIRC conference because it's smaller. They're able to actually make connections more easily with institutional members. NAFSA is so big. And while there's a lot to be gained and we all love NAFSA, it can be overwhelming, particularly for a new agent or a new person coming from an institution.
Sophia, I'd like to add to that. So when we created a designated office for a designated international office on our campus, I began to attend AIRC. The membership is an institutional membership. And I just wanted to add this for those of you who are either trying to build an office and learn recruitment or are at institutions that don't, and states that don't allow the use of agent recruitment. So in both of those instances, AIRC, I think, and this is my opinion, was beneficial to me. The institutional membership, I think, is $600, if I'm not mistaken, and it's an institutional membership, and you have access to a lot of resources. Like Sophia sort of became a mentor to me in the beginning, and she shared some of those resources with me. And now they have a designated mentor program, but she shared her conditional guaranteed admission samples, because I had never done that and I wanted to do that. So she shared those samples, and I have 6 really strong ones now, and I use those. I've just went with Mizzou for Education USA with the University Community College fair. We had to do it virtually, and then now we've taken the show on the road. We've been all over with Ed USA for this, and that's all because of that that conditional guaranteed admission agreement, which I had help in developing a standard agreement to start with. And so I think that AIRC is also really beneficial for institution to institution agreements, for learning about different vendors and marketing companies and recruitment resources outside of agents. And I didn't even utilize the agent partnerships until I'd been involved for 2 years. And I feel like I learned what I learned about creating partnerships with agencies from AIRC. And I took my time in doing it because I wanted to do it ethically and correctly.
Thanks, Virginia. Yeah, the membership fee is actually very reasonable for an institution, and it is actually priced by institution size, actually. But it is very reasonable. And we really are an organization focused on recruitment, international recruitment. That is really what we're focused on. We don't really veer outside of those boundaries because it really is an international strategic enrollment management organization, and that's what we focus on. Okay. All right, so I'm going to pull away from AIRC here a bit, and we can open up to the floor with some questions later. But that was a great little segue, Virginia, onto pathway programs. So she was speaking specifically about conditional guaranteed admission agreements. and the process and structure in which they work. So we have 30 of them at my institution. It is a recruitment tool. You can grow your network, and the affordability of it is beneficial to the students because usually within that agreement, institutions make they make pitches to your students. They try to give them scholarships, and they make it possible for that student to, it's one way they onboard a student into their four-year institution. So these agreements that we've developed, and Washington State has quite a few of these, the institutions in Washington State, it's an agreement between a four-year institution and the two-year institution. In Washington, of course, in all community colleges, within your own state, it's understood that your associate degree is likely going to automatically transfer to the universities within your state. However, our conditional admission agreements have that, but they also include other pieces. So for example, it would say, for example, a student needs to have completed English 101, needs a GPA of 3.0 GPA. If they're a business student, they need, whatever business course is agreed upon between our institution and that one. We draft that up in writing. If they have a scholarship offering, they put it in there. And then if a student decides that that is an institution they want to go to, and we always refer our students to our page that has all of our partners. And if it's determined that the student wants to apply to one of those, we put them in touch with our contact at that institution. They apply, and if they met the criteria that was already agreed upon in that conditional admission agreement, then that student is admitted. Okay, they don't need to go and apply and wait for weeks to determine if they're going to be admitted or not. They are admitted based on the criteria that they'd already completed. Okay, Virginia?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that these, I think, and I know a lot, some states, the agreements between the community colleges and universities are innate, and community colleges in some states are standardized by, we are not in Missouri. So it's really important to have articulated agreements, pathway agreements, transfer agreements, and conditional guaranteed admission agreements. And it's also important from another perspective, and that's the students' perspectives. The students, these are really kind of redundant in a way because we already have these transfer agreements and we have pathways that are articulated. And the reason that these are so helpful though is because in some regions of the world, parents really can't, they're trying to understand what a community college does, and they're not familiar. And so I think it can create an articulation of what the 2+2 is, or what the pathway is, or the transfer process is, so that they can understand that there maybe for those students who want those parents who want their students to complete a four-year degree or a bachelor's degree or even beyond, they're able to see that they're starting at the community college in order to complete a bachelor's degree. And I think that has been the benefit for me. So our conditional guaranteed admission agreements, I have brochures that I'm sprucing up right now. We're in progress of putting in our new pathways and the conditional guaranteed admission agreement and a list of scholarships that are often incentivized, and it's all in one brochure that's targeted toward a region. I'm in the process of developing those right now, and I just think that that's really helpful for recruitment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good point. And the other added benefit to that for the external recruitment effort, I mean, this is really an agreement that helps the student once you have them, right? That's one way of looking at it. Once you have the student, helping them continue on their path. But the other side of it, when we actually, in our admission process, we actually state we have the students list this if they're interested in doing something like this. They indicate institutions they might want to transfer from if they've already reviewed our, where we have our universities that we have these agreements with. If they indicate one of those institutions, what we do when we send them their I-20 and their admission packet is we will include a letter from that institution that shows that they've also been conditionally admitted in this, in the event that they do what they need to do, but it does show their intention, and that certainly helps with their visa.
It does, yeah.
Okay. All right, we will move along. Okay, study abroad. Virginia, take it away.
Okay, so we are running a little short on time, so I just want to sort of provide a general gist, and my email is on here as well. I've used Study Abroad as a recruitment tool. One of the things that it does, if you put it in your international brochure that you have online, or that maybe some of you are using physical brochures, and you put it on your web page and you tell people about it, it really sends a message to international students that you are welcoming and that your institution embraces international students, because it shows that the students at the community college want to go out. So that shows a sense of being welcoming. So that's one thing. And the other thing is, I've used my programs, I've developed programs, and I always look for agents in whatever city they are in. So if I'm in London, because I had an agreement with someone, a program with an institution in the United Kingdom, then I will meet with the agents that I work with who are in London. Now they may be servicing, Bangladesh, but they live in London. And so, but I use that study abroad program. I'll go over with students or visit students, and in the process, I also visit my agents. And I'm also trying to build some new programs in places where I want to recruit from for that reason, because you can go do your partnership with a study abroad partner, and while you're there, you can meet with agents, visit high schools, and so on and so forth. I'll leave it at that because we're running low on time, but I will say that you can try to develop partnerships through your consortium. You can also try to develop partnerships through even when you meet people at your partner institutions, your universities, ask them who their partners are and see if there's some opportunity in there for you. And then NAFSA is a great place to connect on that as well.
Okay, so the next couple of slides, they're just more reference, I think, for anything. Stacy, are the people on this session going to have access to this?
Yeah, we will be putting links to all the PowerPoints from this session into the CCIIG network.
Okay.
So you'll be able to access these. And we're also going to try to put the link to the recording in there at some point once I figure out how.
Okay, great, Stacy. So these are going to be more of just a note for you. Some of you may already know this, but for those of you who are newer to the industry, this is just help in finding either universities whom to partner with or some recruitment tours and ways to research and help you review or research new agents. The Department of Commerce Gold Key Service has something that they do. They have this service that they offer. ISEF, also has you can meet agents through ISEF, but they also have information to share about those agents, as does AIRC. Recruitment Tours, Education USA runs tours. Of course, all of your agents likely will have tours of their own, and there are others as well. And yeah. Education USA and US Commerce, all there. Okay, and here are some organizational partnerships. Community Colleges for International Development, CCIIG, which AIRC just partnered with recently. American Association of Community Colleges, and then there are some foreign ones that we put down here. I don't know quite how institutions have partnered with them. We haven't, but these were information from someone else who had success with that. Vietnam Association of Community Colleges, Association of Canadian Community Colleges, also their agency consortiums like KOSA in Korea, and I believe Japan has one called JASA, but I'm not sure. But there are inter-country, more agency-based. But CCID would be a great CCID would be a great organization to be in touch with for institutional development with partnerships as well. Okay, I think we got through it.
So I've already got 2 questions that I tagged from the chat. That one was from Carol Mint and said that there was a New York Times recent article about the drop in enrollment for community colleges. I was wondering how many colleges in this meeting are working for institutions that have experienced an overall drop in enrollment due to the pandemic. And then this is how this is affecting your global education / international student services. So that might be something maybe more the chair stream, or if anybody wants to tag into chat about things that you're experiencing, that would be good. Sophia, have you had any feedback on that?
Yeah, so Washington, we have an SIO consortium, a Senior International Officer consortium that we meet with, and I'd say somewhat regularly. I think David Rector's on this call, he can chime in. There he is. But we've seen drop across the board in Washington State, 25 to 30%, I want to say, for the institution.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, is that right, David? Yeah. That's about the average. So that's been Washington State, but that's pretty much what we've heard across the board with AIRC as well, with our institutional partners, that there's been a general drop.
I think the Glassdoor's report indicated a pretty significant drop in international, but I don't have that open. But the open doors, not Glassdoor's.
I was going to say, that's a new one.
You're happy with your job.
And I think the second part of that question, Stacy, was it impacting the services? Was that it?
Yeah.
Well, you know, in a sense that budgets have been impacted, I would say yes, across the board as well. I mean, and here's the thing, it's not, I mean, even what we're hearing from the cabinet level, executive level, presidents, vice presidents, et cetera, of our institutions, that is a drop internationally, but there's a drop domestically as well, which has hit the institutions hard. So I would say that because of the general drop in enrollment, whether it be international or not, it has affected staff within the institution. And we look at that, you're looking at, again, the support for those international students. If it's not directly in your office, then it's going to be in some other office that impacts your office. So I would say, yes, there will be a direct impact.
Ashley Tankersley mentioned something you already plugged a little bit. Can you talk a little bit more about the new partnership between AIRC and CCIIG? And what does that mean for us as community colleges?
Yeah, well, I can tell you, I don't know who on this call are actually members of CCID. I've been trying to commit to CCID in this institution. We are not currently members, but we were very active and are very, Green River, my former institution, is very active with CCID. The benefit for community colleges and AIRC having that partnership is pretty clear. CCID, in order to become a member of CCID, there's kind of a commitment that you have to make that you, as a SIO, you commit to being a member of CCID, but you're also committing your president. Okay, so the benefit is that you have a direct link and a direct voice in international education from the decision makers in your institution. And with AIRC, combining with that, connecting with that, that voice of your institution is getting directly heard. So that allows also for, in what we do at AIRC, we have an advocacy chair on our board that is directly linked with what happens at the federal government level. And so all those voices communicating and making our case for advocacy is it becomes stronger and stronger when you have an organization like CCID working with AIRC.
We actually have Stephanie Kelly on with us, so she wants to tag in and to comment on this too as well. So
okay, yeah, sure.
Stephanie, go ahead.
Thank you, Stacy, and Sophia. Thank you. Did a great job of describing the board, college members of our consortium. And I don't want to take up too much time, but we do also have regular membership that doesn't involve quite that level of commitment, but I mean, the network we have of senior international officers around the country is outstanding. And yes, Brian and I have collaborated, and we just launched our partnership today, which means we'll just be doing a lot more things together and webinars and workshops to bring both members from AIRC and members from CCIIG together to look at this very important trend and where we're going with it. So thank you, Sophia. I appreciate it. I put my email in the chat there, and you can see it. And I said something about Times Higher Education. They have a really interesting analysis of the future state by state, the vulnerabilities. And I don't have it on this computer, so I can't put it in the chat right now. But if you email me, I'll send that to you, because they said I could share it widely. But it's an interesting look on which states have some vulnerabilities moving forward, and which states might be in a better position based on demographics, et cetera.
Great. Well, thank you. That's fantastic, Stephanie. It's nice to meet you. I've been trying to loop my president into becoming a CCIIG member, but it's tough to get them when they have such hard time commitments, you know. It's tough
and again, we do have regular membership too, so it doesn't involve that level of commitment. But and I know Dawn is on the webinar here too. But glad to meet you, and I look forward to hearing from everybody.
Great, thanks.
We have one last question, Sophia. How do you reconcile recruitment and DSO responsibilities per the CBIS perspective? That's a good question.
I lost the second part of your. I didn't hear all that.
How do you reconcile recruitment and DSO, designated school official responsibilities, per CBIS?
Per CBIS. So, well, in my office and other offices I've worked with, so I'm the PDSO for our office, and I work hand in hand with our admissions person. I term her as our admissions and enrollment specialist because of the recruitment piece of it, which is the strategic enrollment planning. So I balance it, or I reconcile it with her being involved with everything that we do with regard to target setting in everything that I do with recruitment. So when I'm meeting with our vice president and doing our annual planning for recruitment, she's directly involved in that. So when we're on the road or anything that we have to do, any type of your admission piece, your application is directly linked to what you do with recruitment, right? When you have to look at the larger picture of the institution that you're in. Who are you competing with, whether it be regionally, whether it be domestically on a larger scale, or whether it be internationally. And the admissions person having a hand in that is really, really important, and the success involved with it. I back her up. So she does the main DSO work in our office. I'm her backup. So I have a very clear sense, because I'm looking at numbers with her all the time and everywhere where we might be having any issue. And we work on fine tuning anything that we have to make the streamline of admissions go much more easily. She is in direct contact with the agencies that send us students. So my work with her, closely in line with what her efforts are, and working with the agency on collaboration with marketing and recruitment, all goes hand in hand. So I don't know if I completely answered that question, but
no, I think you answered well, because I kind of agree with you, because I'm both an admissions person and a DSO, but I don't actively recruit, but I have to go through the admissions process. So it is a balance. I think as long as you're following an ethical protocol and you're treating and following standard business practices, and you can really back that up, that you're doing that. But you're right, if it's directly recruited, I think that you're covering your bases, because you're not the one directly doing the admission. You're doing the recruitment, you're involved, but that's not your primary purpose and goal.
Right. Quick response time and making sure that there's nothing being held up at that admission level will directly impact anything that I do. So, she's on my speed dial. She's my number one.
So, well, thank you, Sophia, so much. We're going to move on to our last topic. We're pressed for time, so I'm going to turn it over to Virginia for international student orientation.
Okay, so I wanted to add to that last thing too, just really quickly. I feel like partnering with AIRC and having those standards, and also with keeping in the SEVP regulations in mind, even through the admissions process, that's how I reconcile it, you know. And the agent partners I have are vigilant in helping me access like proof of financial ability, are helping the students understand the importance of the DSO once they arrive. And they help me do that before the students even leave to come to the US. So that's really helpful. And speaking of students coming before they leave, I'm going to go relatively quickly, I hope, because we really are short on time, but I know a lot of us are doing online orientation still. And this was something that I think a lot of people wanted to do, but didn't know what to do in the past. So I want to speak about our journey and my journey with online orientation. First of all, I want to say that I tried to be very concrete about what I hope this presentation will produce. I'm hoping that you'll have references, also that this will help you connect to each other and to me, and also that we provide various perspectives on the online orientation. So according to the latest research, Lerner, Colucci, and Grabing, and I want to say Dr. Grabing, I studied under her in my doctoral program. But according to this recent study, which was focused on a community college, online orientation improved students' GPA retention. And the study, what they did was and this was pre-COVID, this was 2018 when the study took place. So they did recorded online orientations, and they did live ones. There's some that are hybrid. There were some that were on ground, but online. So they were in a room together online, and then completely online. So I thought I would show you what we're shooting to do, because, and this, a lot of what I'm going to show you, and think of yourselves as being sort of in the student experience, if you will. I'll go in and out of character here as though I was orienting you and show you what I was doing. A lot of this is based on my failures from as the director of my program, and just coming up with a really fast strategy on how to do orientation. We were offering hybrid options on our campus, but the orientation did take place on campus. I should tell you that the international students do take College 101 as well, and they also take an orientation-like class for ESL. But we needed a pre-departure support. We needed orientation once they had arrived, because we couldn't have it here on campus. Our classroom space was very limited at that time because of the classes that were taking place. So we did it online. So I'm going to just show you what I will be doing. And a lot of it is based on what my failures were. And I'll kind of break character to show you like what did and didn't work. So first of all, online, it was live. It was live on Zoom. And we have a condition of enrollment that the students must arrive 10 days before the first day of classes. And that is a condition of enrollment. So orientation is a condition of enrollment. And I very much would encourage that, given the research that does indicate increased success and retention. So I had the students get on Zoom, and I was there with the international student specialist, who is here today, as well as an international student advisor. We're a 3-person office, so small. So we got on Zoom with our students who did attend. We had to have more than one, because we also had one for an orientation for transfer students. So we got on Zoom, and this is kind of what we did. We said, welcome. And then I started with basic facts, like when to see a DSO. And I had my instructional services experts
Are you ready to
create
make a
this
motion to
nifty
set up
video. I don't know if you can see that in the
Here's an
screen.
important act. DSO.
So I'm not going to go through the whole video because of time, but it's a nifty video that shows students when they need to meet with a DSO. And then I went over our webpage. Our webpage looks better now than it did then. So I went over and showed them that and this coincided with their when to see a DSO. I showed them when they need to use what form and how to get that form to us. And I showed them how to sign up for advising. I showed them how to make an appointment. I showed them links to information about their insurance, taxes, housing, because we do have on-campus housing, and scholarships and some resources. And so I showed them all of that. And then I showed them how to sign in. I showed them a video that showed them how to sign into Canvas, and how to sign into their student email. And I asked them to all forward their student email with me while we were doing this to their personal email, the one they're really going to check. And we use Canvas, and I have an ISS Canvas page. So once they were set up, because this video showed them how to do it, and we sat together and did it, we then went to the ISS Canvas page. And sorry, I didn't mean to click to the next slide. We went to the ISS Canvas page, and I don't have time to get into that. And they saw that. So really that was a layered orientation, because when they learned how to sign into Canvas to see the ISS page, they learned how to sign into Canvas for their classes. And for the ones that in our short time couldn't get in for whatever reason, it happens. They were able to watch me sign in, and they knew where that video was. Now let me tell you where I failed. I didn't record it. I should have recorded it and sent it all to them, and I should have given them a quiz when it was over. And that is where I failed. And that is what won't happen again this semester. And so now one thing that I will say I was successful with is our orientation is ongoing. So whatever they didn't get that time, we've met since, and we talked about how to request a conference with a professor. We went over all of our campus services because we had so many we didn't even have time to talk about. And at our next meeting, we're really, which should be coming up soon, we're going to talk about services again. We're going to talk about anything they didn't. I'm going to remind them about the forms and remind them they have to have their I-20 signed, anything I need to remind them of. And then we are going to talk about how they're doing and adapting. And we are this time I'm going to have a follow-up quiz to see what they retained from that. So that's a little bit about how it went. So my recommendation is send a recorded pre-departure orientation. I mean, there's nothing preventing us from using a tool like Screencast-O-Matic or Captiva or whatever you want to use to create a video version of this. And then that way at the orientation you do before classes begin, if you are going to do an online orientation, you can invite partners. If you have housing partners. If you have universities, university partners. And so that'll be really helpful for you, I think. And then if they have a sense before they leave of what their requirements are to maintain their status, it'll be really beneficial in helping manage your resources and your time. So the other thing is just follow up with assessment, do lots of it, lots of quizzes. I use Google Forms. I also use quizzes built into Canvas. There are lots of resources out there. And so just layer and connect. And I've already mentioned that. I signed into Canvas. They watched me. They were looking at our department page, but in the process of doing so, they also learned how to sign in for their classes. Mentoring. We have ISS student buddies, and they're leaders. They're ISS student leaders, and they were at the orientation and continued to contact the new students throughout the semester and go over some of the things that we talked to. There were some whose new student mentees were not responsive, but overall it worked very well in continuing the conversation and helping them helping the new students capture what they missed. Don't make your orientation too long. In my opinion, that's my opinion. That's why I like doing it in series. They're exhausted and scared when they first get here. They're excited and scared before they get here. And so I just feel like breaking it into pieces is a really good idea. Use what you have. I told you I used the instructional services department. They made 3 really snazzy videos for me. Use your own. If you don't know how to make a screencast or something like that, I would recommend approaching a faculty member. I mean, they know. And also use your IT department, your campus resources. If you have a counseling center, have a guest speaker, have a guest speaker from the tutoring center. So use the people on campus. There are companies that will develop orientation for you. I know of 2 off the top of my head. I'm sure there are many, and you could put some in the chat and say something about your experiences if you've used them. Comevo and Cognito. I know I was at a demo with Comevo, and they definitely do provide also the international student piece of an overarching orientation for an institution. So my institution does international orientation in addition to everything else. And I think it's really helped. Use your campus partners, universities, ask them how they do theirs. And use your campus partners on campus. And I think I've gotten it all in there. I hope, how am I doing? Oh, 4 minutes to spare. So I think that's pretty much the presentation. Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions? Please put it in the chat.
Or comments.
Yeah, or comments.
Your resources.
Always room for improvement. Oh, I think you were comprehensive. I don't see any questions. Does anybody have any questions about anything else that you've heard today or you want to share? Any of your members out there, if you can think of with questions?
I think there were lots of things that came up about recruitment, and I promise my feelings are not hurt if we want to go back to discuss.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. If anybody has questions about anything we've discussed today, please put a question in the Q&A. We will be happy to address.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I'll answer first. The question is, curious to hear from other schools, how long are your orientations? 1 full day, multiple short days? I've already told you, I've showed you mine. Show us yours. What are the rest of us doing?
Mine is 3 hours. That's it. But I do multiple follow-up webinars during the term.
Mine will come out to be 3 2-hours, 3 orientation meetings, 2 hours.
Well, part of mine is also getting them registered for school typically. So it can go to 4 depending on how much help they need.
We stretch ours out when we're technically on campus. We stretch it out for about 3 to 4 days, a little bit by little bit. So that includes testing and then meeting with the advisor for registration. I do pre-advising with some students before they arrive, similar to what Virginia was talking about. And then making sure they get bank accounts open. We have everybody organized with homestays or whether they're staying in student housing to make sure students get what they need. So we kind of do an all-encompassing, very holistic type of orientation that covers everything they could possibly need.
Some of the things that I did at my university that I carried over to my community college is finding international student leaders who are willing to help with the new students, getting them connected and having a transition. So it's really good for them to have peers to talk to, other than the talking head of the DSO or the director or faculty. Even to hear from students that are their peers really helps with comfort quite a lot, and it also helps make them make connections very quickly. So I have both American and international and first gen students who help my international students as well. So that's always been very helpful.
Someone asked about a vulnerabilities article. I'm not sure. what that is.
Stephanie, can you share that with us and we'll get it out to the network? Stephanie
Yeah,
Kelly.
actually, I just put it in the chat. It's a
Oh,
short
okay.
PowerPoint.
Well,
They
could
did
you
this
email
one.
it to me and we can share it as part of the resources for this talk?
Yeah. Sorry, can you hear me, Stacy? I can do
Yes.
that. I put it in the chat and I'll email it to you. It's just a look at vulnerabilities by state. So you may already know kind of where you're at on that.
Yeah.
I also had a request, if you were doing this presentation on online orientation and you had one tip, what would it be? And if you have time to put it in the chat before we wrap up, that would be really interesting to me. And to all of it, I'm sure more than just me. Yeah, I'm sure I'm not the only one interested in that because I'm sort of making this up as I go along and basing it on my success and failure. So
I think that's a universal problem this year. We've all had to pivot and think differently on how we approach things. But I think that there's room, even when we go back to face-to-face, I think doing it pre-departure a little bit, doing it a little bit when they get here and do it a little bit after they get here, just to kind of address things a little bit. I think that's good because you're right. There's a lot of sticker shock, culture shock, travel shock, jet lag, all kinds of issues when students first get here, and they absorb one word in pen, when they're first arriving. So it's good to do as much as you can staggered. I agree with you on that one.
Oh, I love this question. What leverage do you have with congressional members in the State Department after doing so much work? I think that's for Sophia, but I mean, Sophia, are you?
Was that directed to me? I don't know. Are you talking about AIRC, I'm assuming? Or obviously, I don't think it would be just.
City, could you clarify your question? You can unmute if you need to.
Yes, it's for AIRC. You do a lot of work, but I do not know how much impact. How much impact do you have on U.S. consulate abroad by having linkages with the State Department and congregational leaders?
Mm-hmm. Well, AIRC, I think, it's been around for 11 years, so the impact is only just really growing since we've had an advocacy chair there for the last 2 years and is making some headway into that area. We really have very little impact of what happens in embassies overseas, if that's what you're asking about.
I would say that's universally, no one can do that except the US government.
Yeah, and even then, I would say, but as far as, the kind of impact we can make in Washington, I'd say that it's growing and incremental, and it also depends on if the administration is open to hearing what we have to say.
And EdUSA and EdUSA is at AIRC every year and partners with AIRC in many capacities. I know NAFSA does as well. Am I forgetting anybody that I've seen there?
Do you know about any working relationship between the agents abroad and U.S. consulates?
You mean, so agencies?
Yes, the agents representing students in Vietnam, in different countries. How closely do they work with U.S. consulate or international advisors abroad to help the student navigate the visa application process?
So, and this is more my experience. I won't be speaking for AIRC on this one, but in my experience, there isn't much communication between agencies and the U.S. consulate overseas. The best that I can be, and that makes sense because of the conflict of interest. However, that's where we see education, Fulbright offices tend to take more of that slack up. So information tends to go from U.S. consulate to Fulbright offices, and Fulbright offices can work directly with students or with agencies in countries. That's what I have seen. I'm sure there are others who can speak to that also, but I rarely have seen where agencies have direct communications with anybody from the embassies.
So we've run a little overtime, but just a quick a couple of comments that to Virginia's inquiry regarding orientations. Most of them are talking about taking breaks during presentations and adding activity or icebreakers. The other one was half of the orientation led by ESL specialists that introduce academic culture and logging into Canvas, working in teams, and write a message to the faculty member to practice how to communicate with your faculty. Others said pre-record parts of the orientation that can be sent ahead. Once they arrive, spend more time helping them get acquainted, learn the campus, and meet people. We have one last question, and then we're going to have to wrap this, I hate to say. This is for you, Sophia. What is the commission rate with working with AIRC agents? Was the question.
There is no general commission. There's no standard commission rates. Every school has a different commission rate. Now, generally speaking, in Washington State, it's been around 15% for educational institutions, and I think it's 20 or 25% if you're private, and that's more beyond Washington State. 20 to 25% is what I've seen for private ESL type programs, but there is no standard rate. It just depends on, I would suggest looking at, you know, your local market to determine what would be competitive. That tends to be what we do in Washington. But AIRC doesn't comment on anything about commissions whatsoever. That's strictly up to individual agencies.
Yeah, well, the way it worked at my institution was I used a standard agreement template that I got from the AIRC database, the resources, when I was ready to start recruiting, and I felt that I had a grasp of best practices. And I took it to my business office, and they determined our commission, and that's where it stays.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you really need to, my advice is do your research and find out what the others in the area are using, so that if you
Mm-hmm.
aren't competitive, you know, I mean, if once you get that standard approved, it's going to take a lot to get a new one. So you really want to have a standard with a competitive commission from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to thank everybody who was a guest speaker today, and thank you for those of you who hung around for the whole thing. We really appreciate it. We're gonna put the links into the CCIIG before the end of the week. And again, thank you all for attending, and we hope to see you all again in June. Thank you so much for your time. Sophia, thank you for joining us today so much. And thank you to my chair stream for your help today as well.
Okay.
Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
So much.
Take care.